Presentation by Ashwin Vivekananthan. The three psychological concepts that will be discussed are neurons and behavior, classical and operant conditioning, and attention. Neurons and behavior. Behavior is conveyed through actions by our bodies. These actions are controlled by individual cells called neurons. Neuron cell has three parts: cell body, dendrites, and axon. The cell body has the nucleus of the cell, and dendrites are branched out structures that receive messages from other neurons. The axon is important for sending messages through an action potential, which results in polarized and depolarization across a membrane with the movement of sodium and potassium ions. The action potential is reached when it hits the terminal button. Once there, neurotransmitters are released into the synaptic cleft and they can bind to receptors on a postsynaptic neuron. Whether an excess or insufficient number of certain neurotransmitter can lead to an unusual behavior. Schizophrenia is an example of a disorder that affects human behavior. It is believed that a cause can be seen with brain chemistry. Neurotransmitters such as dopamine, serotonin, and glutamate appear in excess in the brain, could have a role in schizophrenia. Classical and operant conditioning. Classical conditioning is the process in which an organism learns a neutral stimulus, and one that evokes a response and builds an association between the neutral stimulus and the response. Operant conditioning is when a subject operates on the environment to produce an outcome. The main difference between the two is that operant produces an outcome that affects future behavior, while classical, the behavior does not affect the outcome. Example of classical and operant. A kid is getting a vaccine and starts crying. The unconditional stimulus is the pain from the needle puncturing the skin. The unconditional response is crying. The next vaccine, the site of the needle, the conditioned stimulus, will now produce the conditioned response of crying, classical. Operant. Positive reinforcement, having a job, going to work, and getting a paycheck. Negative punishment, siblings fight over a toy, so parents take away the toy. Attention is described as the tendency to respond and remember some stimuli more than others. Bottom-up process occurs when the peripheral stimuli controls it, and top-down process is when you actively shift your attention. Stroop effect and change blindness are two cases in which a tendency to use a pre-attentive process when an attentive process is required. Attention deficit disorder, ADD, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder affect people's ability to maintain attention. The problem is not being able to pay attention, but what they pay attention to. Attention shifts from one thing to another.